Going on YouTube, Cloverbells here back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be updating our regulationG restricted legendary tier list. So this is the list that we have on our screen that was made back on April 3rd, which is like more than 3 months ago. So it's been a hot minute since we've actually had a look at all the restricteds as a whole. I feel like I should have updated this at least once or twice, throughout the format, but we didn't. So the list that you see here, like I said, is back from the beginning of April, before the format even really started. So you can already tell lots of changes need to be made here. Stuff needs to move down, stuff needs to move up, and that's what this video is all about. Because again, the World Championships are just right around the corner now. We're heading towards the end of July, which means we're coming into the final month of August of the regulationG format, and of course that is when the World Championships is happening. Prep has become in full swing, and at the same time, locals have started up again, so now you can start earning CP for the next season, which many people have already started doing. So now you have to ask yourself, well, what's good, right? What's good right now? What's still very strong? What's not so great? Maybe I take a step back from those options. So we're going to help you out here, and hopefully this will guide some of your thoughts in team building as we head into the final month of regulationG. But before we even start, again, just to explain the tiers here, of course, the S tier is what we call the best of the best. These have, the best stats, the best ability, very little drawback in using these, and they have a ton of results, to their name. So without a doubt, okay, again, deserving of that S tier title. Then after that, we have the A tier. So this is what I call your strong and consistent options. These are, restricted legendaries that are very, very common and also very, very strong. You can win a lot of tournaments by picking them. And they just have really good typing, good stats, and the ability is solid. So hence the A tier. The B tier, maybe not as impressive as the A tier, but still like very, very solid. Probably have like one or two things holding it back from the A tier. Whether it be like not as great typing, or a lacking stat, or maybe the ability isn't as good, but the other two categories are strong. So something is holding it back from being in the A tier, but other than that, it's still very, very solid in terms of a pick for a restricted legendary. Then we go into the C tier. This is what I call the niche tier. These type of restricteds are only really good on one type of team, or just someone likes to make content and utilize it and say, hey, we made a Solgaleo team that does really, really well. Something like that for that matter. So very niche. Just only really good on one particular archetype, and be outside of that, it's just not that great, and you have better options. Then we have the don't use tier. These are just not very good in VGC, and you should probably just stray away from them. If you're trying to get some competitive results to your name. Okay, and then of course the pre-evolutions. Nobody's using these. Nobody's using Cosmog and all of that. So we're just gonna put those in their own category. It's not even don't use. It's just like, there's no consideration whatsoever. These are like, again, the pre-evolution stuff. All right, so now that we've explained the tiers, let's go ahead and start moving things up. Okay, so two Pokemon that I already see right away that definitely should at least move up into the A tier is Koraidon, one of them, and then the other one being Zamazenta. So let's go ahead and move Koraidon up here. And basically the whole idea with Koraidon, since we made it as a B tier, back in April, which now we know is it's merited an A tier slot. It's the partners that you can build around Koraidon, right? So if we just go into the team builder, what are some of the standard Koraidon teams that you're going to be looking at right now that have been successful? They're going to have a lot of the photosynthesis mons. So imagine stuff like Raging Bolts, imagine stuff like Fluttermane, and then from here, even Rillaboom's going to be good, especially when you want to go against the Miraidon stuff to be able to take away the terrain, right? This is like a very standard starting core to build with Koraidon here. And then from there, you have a bunch of flex slots. You can have stuff like Entei, which is really, really nice. And then maybe even, drop the Rillaboom altogether. And then maybe even just go for the Cornerstone Ogerpon, which, by the way, has, seen an increase in play, over the past month or so. I think it's actually just the best Ogerpon right now. And you couldn't even imagine that, several months ago, but it has become that kind of Ogerpon. Sturdy is a very, very good ability, by the way. So you can pretty much just build a team with this. And then this last slot here can be something, something along the lines like a Ditto, or, you know, some kind of other speed control mount, maybe like a Tornadus, maybe a Chi-Yu for that matter. But ideally, anyway, you know, just for Koraidon itself, besides the fact that you can enable these partners, you're a fighting type, and you're gonna have a good matchup into Terapagos, right? So again, the collision course is a very strong move. Terapagos is very, very terrified of Koraidon. So that's your one selling point there. Then, of course, you can have speed control with the Flame Charge. You know, just outspeed things after one. And then after that, you have the hard-hitting Flare Blitz and the Sun. Really, really good. And then because of the Clear Amulet item now in Scarlet and Violet, now you can't really get intimidated. So, you know, you get to hit really, really hard and hit pretty fast, you know, with this typical Koraidon set. Some even go for the typical U-turn set to, you know, pivot out. Just in case, you know, the Pelipper teams come in and change your weather, then you can just reset it by manually switching out yourself, right? So, you know, the Koraidon has been a very, very good pick, and it has had some good results to its name. So hence the reason why we should be moving it up into the A tier. It's a very, very strong, consistent option. And again, the main selling point is you do a very good job at enabling a lot of those partners, like a Fluttermane, like a Chi-Yu, like an Entei, like a Raging Bolt. These are all very, very good options that are often getting partnered with Koraidon. So, and again, like we mentioned, the Terapagos matchup. Something else that needs to move up, I think Zamazenta also merits a slot up because, again, it has had regional results to its name. It's very, very successful thus far. You know, and you just consider, again, that like fighting typing, just like Koraidon, again, giving you a very, very good solid matchup into the Terapagos, which is often sometimes tough if you don't have that fighting typing altogether, right? So, you know, and then now it got body press, right? Which was the main selling point back in April, which is why we put it in the B tier in the first place, but it has exceeded expectations without a doubt. So, you know, you have Iron Defense, you have the Wide Guard potential, of course, you have the Heavy Slam, or if you want to go for the Protect, that's also fine. But again, you know, you can get intimidated, but you don't really care about the intimidate anyway, because, you know, body press is just factoring in your defense. So it's not a huge detriment for Zamazenta to get intimidated, you know, in that case, right? And then you just partner this stuff with, you know, with Chien-Pao and Rillaboom and then Urshifu. And this is a very, very solid Zamazenta starting core, right? Where Chien-Pao is just making all these options do a ton of damage. So, you know, in that sense, I think I like it a lot. You know, it's also pretty decent into the Calyrex-Ice Rider. Again, it's an ice type. You know, you're forcing it to Terra for that matter. You know, again, this super bulky defense, along with the extremely good special defense as well, make Zamazenta relatively hard to remove. So, you know, I think A tier is also quite correct in where we want to move it up. And then after that, you know, is there anything else we really want to move up? Like, just put it in like the quote-unquote solid tier, you know, just moving things up from D or C or moving them up into A. I think this list is going to be more like moving things down for that matter. And I think that makes sense here. But, you know, at least we got some of these two to move up into the A tier where they belong. I think the other thing we also need to move up here is the Calyrex-Ice Rider. I think it definitely has earned this S tier slot. Like, this thing has the results to name. And again, it's just so impressive. It has a ton of bulk, way more bulk than its counterpart. Like, look at this. Base 150 defense, 130 special defense, 100 HP. Really, really strong. Glacial Lance, of course, no drawback there. High horsepower for your fire types. And then from there, you have the Trick Room idea, and then you just have Protect. Then you have Clear Amulet. You can't get intimidated, which is really, really beneficial for Calyrex. Then you have the Terra options. 3 Terra options are pretty good right now. You can go the Fire route. So this way, you don't take Steel or Fire damage. You resist them. You can't get burned. You can also go with the Water route. Same idea in that sense, right? And then at the same time, you get to resist Urshifu stuff, so that's pretty cool. And then you can also go Terra Grass at the same time, which, again, under Trick Room makes you immune to the Amoonguss because, again, under Trick Room, the Amoonguss will outspeed you and will just click Spore. So that's never good. So if you can get the Grass Terra onto the Calyrex, that's going to help it a lot, right? So these are the 3 primary Terras that you want to play on the Terapagos. And then from there, it's just really good at what it does. It's a Trick Room sweeper. And then from there, it's just all about supporting it. So, you know, very common cores with Incineroar and Amoonguss. Of course, they're going to come in here. And then you can just add stuff like Raging Bolt, then the Pelipper, and then, of course, the Urshifu. This team is still good even right now. it's still getting results, you know, because it has a lot into the entire meta, right? So, you know, you've got Intimidate, you've got Fake Out and Redirection, all things you need to be able to set up your Trick Room. You have good positioning with Parting Shot here with the Incineroar, and then the Raging Bolt, you know, just gives you a good solid special attacking Trick Room sweeper, right? Because it's also slow here. So you've got your physical sweeper, you got your special sweeper here, and then you just have Urshifu Pelipper just doing a ton of breaker damage in the rain, which is really, really good. But this is not the only way to really use Calyrex, right? You have seen stuff like Smeargle, okay, along with the Electabuzz stuff, which is, you know, Audie's team, you know, Tub Nation, of course, right? So you might see stuff like this with Smeargle, and then the Annihilate, you know, just going with the Choice Scarf, Final Gambit stuff. So you'll see stuff like that. And then, of course, the Electabuzz is really good at redirecting the Amoonguss Spore because, again, Vital Spirit means you cannot fall asleep. So, you know, that kind of core is still good even now. And then at the same time, you can also, you know, see those Ursaluna Blood Moon teams where, again, another special Trick Room sweeper gives you a Miraidon matchup, gives you a Calyrex Shadow Rider matchup because, again, Mind's Eye lets you hit it, so that's really, really nice. So you have Glacial Lance plus Hyper Voice Spam, which is really, really nice. And there's not a lot of things that want to be able to take that. So, you know, if you can just have a team centered around this is also going to be really, really solid. But overall, Calyrex is just a really strong restricted to use. Again, Glacial Lance spread move, no drawback, no accuracy check, doesn't matter. So, you know, it's not like Kyogre Origin Pulse or Groudon Precipice Blades. There's no fear in clicking Glacial Lance. So I think S tier is correct right now for the Calyrex-Ice Rider. It's won a bunch of online tournaments. It's won some a regional and then some special events as well. So without a doubt, very, very good restricted. It's my pick, in all honesty, to win the World Championships. That's my take. Okay, let's start moving things down here. So basically, you know, I think Miraidon and Terapagos can go back down into the A tier. So I was very ambitious with these two. I think both of them were very, very strong, you know, just in terms of testing back in April, you know, and then everybody was a really, really firm believer of Miraidon after that first regional with Rajan Ball and his team. So maybe at that point, it could have been in the S tier for sure. And then Terapagos was always getting like second place finishes at big regionals. So you could have even said that, you know, the Terapagos did actually earn that S tier slot, but there was a recent Victory Road tournament, and there wasn't a single Terapagos in day 2, and that was a little bit shocking, and that makes me think that perhaps the meta, you know, with all the tools that people are bringing for Terapagos, maybe pushes it down into the A tier right now, and I think that's correct. It's still very strong. You know, you're still doing the Calm Mind stuff, you know, with Terapagos. You can even still use the Choice Spec stuff, so I think both sets are going to be really good. So, again, imagine Choice Specs here, you know, just giving you immediate damage right from the get-go. No need to set up. And then at the same time, I also think the Calm Mind Leftover set is going to be good, where you're just really just looking to set up. And then, you know, from there, just get a bunch of boosts and then start sweeping with Terra Starstorm, and I think that's going to be good. And then Earth Power, of course, for the Steel type, something to hit Zamazenta with, right? I think these are your two best sets right now. Technically, you can also go... This is actually my favorite set on Terapagos. If you go with the Covert Cloak set, you know, Snarl is annoying. If you get Snarled, that's not great, you know, because all those Calm Mind boosts that you're going to be doing is not so great. And then, you know, you'll just get special defense boosts, but, you know, you need to deal damage with your restricted, right? So I do think Covert Cloak is probably, at least in my opinion, the best item. So this way you don't get those stat reductions from Snarl. So I think that's important. Then from there, it's just all about supporting Terapagos. You can do like double fake out redirection stuff like Rillaboom and something like Iron Hands, right? You know, we've seen that before. And then even Grimmsnarl Screens has been really, really solid, okay? Right? You can definitely play Terapagos like this and then just build the core around this. You could even still do the Comfey stuff, where you're just looking to heal Terapagos back to full and, you know, take advantage of Terra Shell. You can do it that way. You can also do Volcarona stuff, which I think is also quite nice on Terapagos teams because it gives you a matchup into Koraidon and Zamazenta. So I do like the Volcarona idea as well. Look, this actually looks like a decent 6 in my opinion, right? So, you know, lots of different ways to support Terapagos. We've even seen the Clefairy route, right, where you can just have Clefairy redirect all the fighting moves onto itself, you know, especially with the Violet, it makes it super bulky. And then, you know, you're just able to bring out the Friend Guard, so Terapagos isn't taking that much damage anyway. Then you have Helping Hand potential, right? And then the thing just starts to sweep, right? So you can even just look at it that way. But either way, I think right now A tier is correct. And same thing with Miraidon. You know, Miraidon just does so much damage, right? Whether you have the Choice Specs item or even the Life Orb set is pretty good. I think Miraidon with Grimmsnarl Screens is very, very solid. Like, I just think these two, along with Iron Hands, and then build the team from here is quite solid. Like, Miraidon Screens, I think, can go far. I think it could even reach the finals, in my opinion, right? I do expect the Miraidon Calyrex-Ice Rider finals. I think, you know, Grimmsnarl Screens helps it a lot. You know, it lets it stay on the field and be annoying, especially deal a bunch of chip damage. And then from there, you know, you have stuff like the Chiyu to make it even do more damage. Then you just have straight Farigiraf and the Blood Moon Ursaluna stuff, right? You don't even have to use the Blood Moon Ursaluna. You could even have something else here, but this is like a very, very common core. But again, the Miraidon with the Choice Specs is just going to do so much damage, right? And it has been dealing so much damage. And even in the case of Rillaboom, all you have to do is just click Volt Switch, get the heck out, okay, reset terrain, and now Rillaboom is looking pretty scared right now because, you know, even if the Rillaboom has the Assault Vest, if that electric terrain is still up, Miraidon, you know, depending on the EV spread, can still, like, kind of OHKO the Rillaboom. So, you know, you have to still be careful there. So, I do still like Miraidon Screens. I think just giving it bulk while Miraidon's dealing all this damage is going to be quite useful, in my opinion. So, for sure, the A tier is correct here. I still want to move some other stuff down here. Now, again, I was pretty also very ambitious with Lunala, right? I do, you know, and I'm still going to keep it here. I think correct is the B tier for Lunala. I do think that's where we need to place it. But, you know, we've had some good teams with this, right? Especially with both of the Ursalunas, in my opinion. So, you know, if I just were to take away some of these options, I think there's two main ways to really play the Lunala at the moment. But this is one of those Pokemon where it's going to be really, really good in a dual restricted format, right? And we've seen that historically, especially when it came to pairing this thing with Groudon, especially back in the Sword and Shield days, even before Sword and Shield, right? Sun and Moon days, like Lunala as a secondary restricted was always really good because, again, you have the option to set up Trick Room, okay? And then at the same time, you can also deal a ton of damage with Moongeist Beam, and then, of course, the power of Meteor Beam set, okay? I think this was still solid because, again, most Trick Room users are just super bulky, but they don't really deal damage. But Lunala can do both, where it can do damage and it can set Trick Room, okay? But it's still sometimes a little bit lacking, right? And it's still sometimes hard to use. It just makes Calyrex seem a little bit easier to use, right? So this is where, like, you can probably use Lunala as, like, a supporting secondary restricted and then a primary restricted to be, like, the main damage dealer, right? But at the same time, you know, you can still have Protect here. You can still do, like, hard Ursaluna stuff, right? You know, with Instant Amoonguss, right? You know, we've seen this kind of core at the same time, right? And then from here, you have, like, Urshifu, and then you can even have stuff like Raging Bolt or just straight up Pelipper, right? We've seen this 6 before, but you can also do the Tailwind direction, right? So if I just show that real quick, it usually involves the Indeedee, okay, along with the Tornadus here. All right, and then at the same time, you might even have the Blood Moon Ursaluna, or you might even have the Physical Ursaluna. Either way, they both can do well under Tailwind because you can outspeed the Shadow Rider under Tailwind. But the whole idea with this is that now you have Expanding Force to go along with the Indeedee Psychic Terrain. And then that just makes Lunala do a ton of damage because, you know, with Terrain up, okay, and then you have the idea for Helping Hand, Lunala just does a lot of damage. And then you can even play it, you know, with like a Calm Mind setup where you can just set up, you know, with leftovers, you know, maybe get your Shadow Shield back, Calm Mind, and then from there, you can just do Meteor Beam, Moongeist Beam, and then Moon Blast. Wait, hold on. Oh yeah, I actually had Moon Blast first. You know, we just had that over there. So you can even play Lunala like this if you don't want to play like the Tailwind aggressive way. So I think that works out well. But either way, I still think B tier is pretty solid for it. It can definitely win you a tournament, right? We've seen it before already. in some of those online limitless tours, but it's still going to be hard pressed in the World Championships. I still think it'll make a day 2 cut, but I don't see it going further than that. But you know, B tier is still pretty solid if you want to bring it into a local tour, right? Oh, by the way, I'm looking at Kyurem-White here. You know, we made a pretty cool Kyurem-White team. The only thing is, I think it's still like pretty niche. You know, it does well into stuff like Rillaboom, Urshifu, and Incineroar. You know, if it does have that Assault Vest set, so let's just go ahead and put that on the screen here, like for Kyurem-White, that Assault Vest set, right? If you just look at it, it actually does relatively well into a lot of the meta, right? So Blizzard, of course, Freeze Dry, then you have something like Earth Power, and then you have Fusion Flare. Okay, this does well into a lot of different things. I do think you have to have the Alola Ninetales here, right? So we can give it screens, right? And just make the overall team bulky. But at the same time, again, you're still making things a little bit harder for yourself. You know, there's still, you know, fairies running around, Fluttermane's still running around, Terra Fairy, Draining Kiss, Calyrex is still running around. You do have the Assault Vests, okay? And you do have the idea for screens, but it's just so much support for Kyurem just to stay in front of the Calyrex, right? So sometimes it gets a little bit tricky, but it's not bad. Like if you told me I had to bring Kyurem-White to a local, I would be okay with that. But if you told me I had to bring Kyurem-White to a world championship, I'm a little bit afraid, okay? And that there's a difference between the two, right? And for that reason, I do think C tier is correct for Kyurem-White. Relatively niche. You can still build a good team around it, but I think there's just better options. You know, if you're trying to be like super competitive. All right, so from here, I think Kyogre is still correct here in the A tier. I do like Kyogre still in the format. There's lots of different ways to play it, but I think what's really good right now is that Screens Kyogre team, right? With Grimmsnarl, I think Kyogre Screens is going to go a long way. And they usually have this double grass core with Rillaboom and Amoonguss, right? So you have Fake Out potential, and then in the Trico matchup, you have Spore. Okay, and then Amoonguss and Rillaboom, they both like the rain because that means you're taking reduced fire damage altogether. So in that sense, I think it looks pretty good. And then from here, you just have the pretty standard Raging Bolt. And then, of course, in the rain, you can even have something like Incineroar here for your fire type. You can even have something like Urshifu. But I just think right now, this type of team is looking really good, you know, moving forward. Because, again, Kyogre just becomes super bulky. Usually this is like, look, you have double Fake Out, Redirection, and Screens. This is the Leftovers Calm Mindset for Kyogre, right? So now Kyogre is looking super bulky. It's usually just Origin Pulse, right? And then you're gonna probably have an either Ice Beam or Thunder, but you're giving up Water Spout, right? And you have to make a sacrifice in that sense for Kyogre. You're gonna have to miss a couple of Origin Pulses, right? But I still feel like this type of team just has so much going for it right now into the meta. Like, again, you have a lot of different answers, like a lot of good support options all together, and then just being able to set up the Kyogre with the Calm Minds, right, where your special defense is already a lot, and then you add the fact that you can have Reflect and Intimidate from your Incineroar, just makes Kyogre more bulkier on the physical end, and then you just chip things away with Origin Pulse. You can heal it with, you know, Pollen Puff, Rillaboom, Grassy Terrain, helps Kyogre stay alive longer. Right, I really like this Kyogre Screens teams right now. I think it merits its own video, but I did want to at least mention it here. So, yeah, I still like Kyogre here. Groudon, we were very ambitious with Groudon back in April. I still think it can be solid. I still think B tier is correct. Maybe not as good as Koraidon because some of you guys are afraid to miss Precipice Blades. But if you have the Clover luck where your luck is +1, you're not afraid to miss Precipice Blades, and then, you know, you can easily put Groudon back into the A tier. But the same reasons for Koraidon. Again, you know, you're a ground type, actually, right? And that's the one advantage that Groudon's going to have over Koraidon. The fact that you can have ground typing, you know, have it really good. Again, oh, this is actually a pretty good Groudon team, right? I'm not going to lie. I just took out Kyogre and put in Groudon. This actually looks pretty cool. But what you can do with Groudon is, you know, have that good positive matchup into Miraidon, right? Because, you know, it can't click any of its electric moves. Then at the same time, you know, you have Raging Bolt and Rillaboom here for the Kyogre matchup per se. The only thing you're really going to need is maybe like some fighting coverage in that sense. So that might stop this type of team. But Groudon Screens has been always, historically good, especially back in Sword and Shield. If you just think back to like the Rinya Sun stuff, right? So you might even have a Chi here instead of an Incineroar. But, you know, I'm still a firm believer in Groudon. I still think it's a pretty solid restricted. I've seen the results it can take. If people are more willing to explore it, they'll realize the potential that, you know, Groudon is still a very, very good solid restricted to use. You know, good stats, right? Look at this bulk. 140 defense, special defense, not that bad either. 90, good attack stat. You can't intimidate this thing because we're always going to be giving this the clear amulet, right? And then if it even has any kind of setup with Swords Dance, it's just going to be super scary to deal with Groudon. So I do like this a lot. Imagine Lunala with Groudon. That's going to be quite the regulation, I don't know, something team whenever they release it. But, you know, Lunala Groudon looking pretty good in Scarlet and Violet when that day does come. Okay. Where else are we putting things? Okay, yeah, we were, you know, we still believed in Zacian's potential. And, you know, to a degree, it's still okay. But, you know, I think B tier is the right placement. You know, it has had some good, solid results. Not as good as some of the others, but it's just nowhere near the restricted it once was back in, you know, Sword and Shield. I tried to, you know, give it the benefit of the doubt back in April, but it just doesn't have enough going for it. I think the nerfs were too much, but that team with Tornadus and the Umbreon from Slushy 2K, right? I call him Slushy 2K. This was like their premier Zacian team, right? And then from here, you had Chien-Pao, you had Rillaboom, and then you had Urshifu. You know, again, Chien-Pao making all of these options do a ton of damage. And then Umbreon was just correct here, right? Because if you just look at this, you know, where's your Trick Room matchup per se? What did I do? I think I did something. Oh, I took out the Rillaboom, right? The Umbreon gives you that specifically, exactly, because look, you know, base 60 speed tier, well, 65 technically. You have not just Foul Play, but you also have Yawn, right? And, you know, you can just yawn things to sleep, okay? And then you can just stall out all those Trick Room turns or force them to switch, which is, again, stalling it out, right? So Umbreon looks great against both Calyrexes, the Shadow Rider and the Ice Rider. And then from there, you know, these guys, you know, just Chien-Pao, Ursh, Rillaboom, they can win you a lot of games all by themselves. And sometimes the Zacian may not even be needed. You know, and that sounds like wild to say, but that's just how good these guys have been in regulationG and just Scarlet and Violet altogether. But this has been the premier Zacian team. I haven't found one as good as this in terms of like looking at the results. I did have some ideas of just, you know, putting stuff like Gouging Fire here, you know, so maybe something even like this, where instead of, I don't know, maybe it's hard to remove Chien-Pao here, but even something like this with Gouging Fire, where you have this Dragon Fairy, Steel, Fire, Water, Grass Core with Rillaboom and Ursh, looks really good on paper, but sometimes it's just a little bit hard. And Chien-Pao is just so good in what it does, where I just don't even think Gouging Fire is that great at this point in regulationG. But, you know, that being said, I do think Zacian, again, it's still a hard-hitting mod with base 150 attack. Behemoth Blade still does a ton of damage. Play Rough still does a ton of damage to the Dragon Restricteds. You know, you can one-shot Fluttermanes for that matter. And Rillaboom can't do a whole lot to you, right? And Rillaboom is super strong right now in that sense. You know, you just think of Raging Bolt. Again, having that fairy coverage against that is also really, really solid. But I still think, you know, with all this offense, and it's also still very fast, right? You know, with only Calyrex Shadow Rider outspeeding it. So in that case, yeah, Zacian has been good. And then don't forget, you can still do stuff like this, you know, where you can still build around Zacian, Tornadus, and that Regidrago idea from Grant. Remember when we featured Grant's team back when we had the collaboration series? I still like these three all together. Like, even you can even slap in something like Indeedee over here and still do like relatively flying. I still like this trio. I think it's pretty good. If you want to go to a local with these three, I think you can definitely win for sure. So, but anyway, I digress. Zacian definitely in the B tier. Okay, dropping it down from the A. All right, so let's put Palkia into. All right, so, you know, without Dynamax, you know, I haven't seen a Palkia at all in this generation. Not at all. I'm just gonna put this in the don't use. You don't need to use this thing. The origin form is definitely like at least a little bit better, but you know, even then, I still like the other one better. I think Dialga is still a little bit better. right? It's just the moves can miss. It's just not so great. Like, it got faster, which was pretty nice, but doesn't really have a ton going for it. It's not bad into Kyogre at least, but that's not enough where you can merit a restricted slot over some of these other guys, right? So, I think putting it in the don't use tier is correct. Rayquaza, definitely in the niche tier. Of course, you have this idea where, you're just really just partnering it with Chien-Pao, and that's really it, right? You have just Chien-Pao, Amoonguss stuff, along with maybe even Tornadus here. But again, just going for that Clear Amulet, Extreme Speed, Terra Normal, can do a lot of things for it, right? You can just snipe a lot of things. And then what's really cool is you have Swords Dance here. So you can set up the Swords Dance and then just keep clicking Extreme Speed, right? Which is kind of funny when you think about it, if you do this. But there's so much Serena and Fergraph right now, and even in DD, that it just makes it hard for this, to do anything, which is why you have to have other options on your team to deal with those options before Rayquaza can even do its own job. But at the very least, one-shotting things with Swords Dance, Extreme Speed is quite nice. But the argument remains, why not just use Dragonite and save yourself the restricted slot and still be okay in doing this, right? So it's hard to, argue Rayquaza over Dragonite, right? Because again, you don't have to commit a restricted for Dragonite. That being said, Dragonite does not get Swords Dance, so that might be the main argument there. But, still, I think C tier is correct. Not as bad as the D tier, of course, but I still think it's relatively niche in what we're supposed to do. I do think the other Dialga is, just like Palkia, also belongs in the D tier. Okay, Origin Dialga. I think this one is also still in the C tier. The one thing that it has going for it outside of this, it's not very good, but the one thing that it can do is take advantage of its telepathy ability with Ursaluna, right? And what that means is, again, you're not taking damage from your allies, so you can always do Earthquake spam, with Dialga and center it, with the Amoonguss at the same time. This is your core, and then from here, build around these three. But this is the main thing that you can really do with that. And then outside of that, it's just not that great. So if you're going to use Dialga Origin, Ursaluna already has to come just because of the Earthquake shenanigans that it can do, right? So I do like that idea, but outside of that, not so great. Just use our team. It was already pretty solid, because outside of that, it's just not so great. You have to commit the Adamant Crystal, which is not, super great by any means, but look at the bulk, by the way. Like HP 100, defense and special defense 120, so it's really, really bulky, right? And then it has a pretty good special attack stat, but it's only going to be great for the Steel and Dragon moves. So stuff like Flash Cannon, yes, is okay. Draco Meteor also is pretty good, but sometimes Flash Cannon doesn't really do the job. So you end up having to go with Steel Beam, right? Where you have to just lose half your health to just do like one big giant nuke. Sometimes that one big giant nuke might be all you need, but, if you told me I had to go with Dialga, I have to bring Ursaluna, but that's it. That's really it, what you can really use right now with that Pokemon. So I think C tier is correct here. Ho-Oh, same thing. You saw our team with it. I think it has to have coaching to be able to do a pretty good job there. I think Urshifu is a must. The one thing that Ho-Oh has for it, again, is the fact that you have a decent matchup into Koraidon and Zamazenta, right? And Regenerator, just like Amoonguss, where you can just heal yourself, on switch out, which is pretty nice. I do think Ho-Oh, just like Lunala, is another one of those Pokemon that it's going to be much better in a dual restricted format. You can even consider putting Ho-Oh on a Sun team like Koraidon with Groudon at the same time. The only thing with that is only one of those options can get the Clear Amulet, which means the other one is susceptible to Intimidate. So you have to be aware of that. But I do think Ho-Oh is not bad in a dual restricted format. But right now, it's just a little bit struggling. Yes, you have Clear Amulet. Yes, you do have Tailwind as access. But I think the recovery move is pretty good. Sacred Fire is great. But if I really wanted that, I might as well just use Entei anyway. And Entei has Inner Focus. I don't really care about Intimidate, so I'm not needed to commit the Clear Amulet item in that sense, right? I can run stuff like Assault Vest, I can run Life Orb, okay? I can run other items, right? But because of my own ability, I have that luxury where I don't have to commit an amulet, and I don't have to commit a restricted slot for Sacred Fire in that sense, right? So, you know, C tier at best for Ho-Oh. Still a fun mon, of course. Was good content. But yeah. After that, where else? Are we putting anything else here in this B tier? Where else are we? Is there anything else that can sneak up in here? Where we can just move stuff up here. I'm keeping Lugia where it is. Okay, how about these guys? These guys, Reshiram and Zekrom, definitely down here. It's just not their time. The format just doesn't go for. Same with Kyurem-Black. Don't use Kyurem-Black. If you want to use one of the Kyurems, at least use Kyurem-White. It's much better, right? You don't have to commit a clear amulet, and it doesn't even have a great ice move to begin with. You can do like loaded dice, Icicle Spear stuff now, I guess, but then you just get Intimidate cycled, and then it just doesn't do any damage. You know, even Eternatus, right? I still think Eternatus is still like in the C tier for sure. Again, you can still do stuff like Cosmic Power and Toxic. You know, you can still do stuff like that, but oh man, that's just annoying, and who wants to do that, right? So, you know, Cosmic Power, what is it? Is it Toxic? Yeah, you can do this stuff. Okay, sure. I just rather nuke with it. You know, it's got a good special attack stat. Poison is not bad, typing-wise, right? It's okay, but, you know, not too many teams can really bring out the best in Eternatus. I do think stuff like maybe Whimsicott with Fate Tears can be a play. I think that's okay. Then you can add stuff like Chiyu, and then add something like a Fluttermane over here. This could be good, right? And, you know, just in terms of this core. Then you slap on some physical options like an Urshifu, and then you add something like a Chenpao for that sake, or, you know, and then this could be an Eternatus team, right? You know, I just have a bunch of hard-hitting options, and then I have a physical backbone, and you can do something like this, right? Cool, but I can have another restricted that does this job way better. Okay, so, you know, you just have to consider that. But I do think in the C tier, it is correct for Eternatus. Same thing with Lugia over here. You know, here's the set with Lugia, right? And, you know, funny enough that we're talking about Lugia because I think we're going to do a team building video on this soon. It's been widely requested. So I have to honor that, of course. But, you know, you just think about this set. Look, Aeroblast, this is the set. Aeroblast, Earth Power, Calm Mind, Protect, and just so that you don't suffer from Snarl, you're going to have the Covert Cloak item, right? And, you know, this just reminds me of Terapagos, right? Where, you know, I'm going for these Earth Power, Calm Mind, Protect ideas, and then here's my signature move, right? Where I have Terra Starstorm and whatnot, right? So, you know, if you had to just do a set like this, I'd rather just use Terapagos, right? Why use Lugia when I could use this, you know? But it's super bulky, right? In that sense, right? But so is Terapagos, like 110, you know, Terapagos still got really good bulk, okay? But if you're hard pressed and you want to say, oh, Lugia is just my favorite mon, I want to use it, okay, it can work, right? A little bit, you know, you can still do stuff with Comfey, you know, get your multi-skill back, keep setting up Calm Minds, right? You know, because this again, this special attack stat is just absolutely abysmal. I think I've said this before, but look at this. You know, if I put Ghastly on the screen, okay, look at Ghastly for a second. Yeah, Ghastly, right, has 100 base special attack. Lugia has 90. The fact that a Ghastly has more special attack than a Lugia, that says something, okay? Just use Terapagos, but it can still work if you really want to struggle. But I think C tier is correct, all right? Solgaleo, same thing. The one thing that, you know, that can really separate Solgaleo, you know, from some of these other restricteds for the most part is the fact, for a couple things. One, Full Metal Bali is a really good ability, right? You don't take those stat drops, those intimidate cycles, but you also get access to Wide Guard, okay? But Lunala also gets access to Wide Guard, right? So if you really wanted a Sun and Moon Wide Guard user, I'd probably just pick Lunala anyway, as opposed to Solgaleo. You know, this isn't Dynamax anymore. There's no Max Steel Spike or Max Quake, you know, that has Solgaleo, you know, activating the weakness policy for it, right? You know, and maybe you could just click Bulldoze on it and then, you know, go from there. This isn't that format, right? So you're just forced to maybe just go Life Orb here. I know Ralph Dude has done this. I can't forget his I keep forgetting his first name. Right. But You know, Sunsteel Strike is still pretty solid, you know, and then of course you do have the Wide Guard at the same time. You can also click Earthquake too, which is kind of funny here. Or you can just go for another, you could do Psychic Fangs. You know what? Actually, Psychic Fangs looks pretty good here. Just because, you know, there's a lot more Grimmsnarl now, so the fact that you can break screens is going to be good. You can snipe a Mungus, right? So, or some other Terra Poison. So this is like a somewhat of a niche set, right? And then from there, you can kind of build from here. Maybe give it a Tailwind option like Tornadus, and then just go with like super standard stuff. Maybe and have Chentao over here. But other than that, I think it's a little bit hard to use Solgaleo, but it's still better than some of these other guys, right? I think C tier is correct for what we want Solgaleo to do. Giratina, okay, this one definitely stays in the D tier, but I think the other one can move up a little bit. Like, I would just put at the very, very end here. And the one thing that this one can do that the other one can't, well, the other one has Telepathy, but this one at least has Levitate, so that's not too bad, where you can whiff ground moves. And then this one is not a bad special attacker. Decent bulk also, but, you know, if I really wanted a Ghost Dragon, I've said this before, I just use Dragapult. Like, I outspeed everything. Yeah, and then look, you know, the only thing that that really outspeeds me is the Calyrex, right? So, you know, other than that, I'd rather have this. I have Clear Body. So, you know, if I really wanted a Ghost Dragon, I think this is just better, right? And I have the same attack stat, and then I don't have to commit a restricted slot to it, right? So, in my opinion, I think this is much better than both Giratinas. If I had to pick a Ghost Dragon, it's just not the format for it. In a format where there's Calyrex-Ice Rider and Shadow Rider, you're weak to both of them, forced to Terra every single time. I don't like that. So, you know, niche tier at best, probably can stay in the D tier, but I'm being relatively, you know, optimistic somewhat, you know, for Giratina Origin here. All right, this Lunala, okay, the Dawnwings one, this one can come into the niche tier. You know, I've seen that team, you know, with the Torkoal stuff and the Lilligant. I think that's okay. I think that's really the only team that can really do well with it. Where's this Necrozma, Dawnwings here, right? You just have Torkoal, you have the Lilligant stuff. Yeah, this one has worked, of course. And then you have the rest of the other stuff here, you know, maybe with like Ursaluna stuff. But, you know, just Prism Armor it's not a bad ability. It's just not as good as Shadow Guard, right? I didn't even say that correctly. Shadow Shield. I said Shadow Guard. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's been a long day. But at the same time, look, it's got a really good special attack stat. 157 versus 137. You know, the bulk is much better in that sense, right? A little bit lower HP, of course. Actually, a lot lower HP. So you have to consider that. But again, Shadow Shield is just much better than Prism Armor. But not to say that this is not playable. I still think it's very good for what it can do. But in my opinion, I would just use Lunala. I think it's just better, right? In most regards. So now looking at the rest of this, is all of this in the right spot here? The only things is I just want to talk about a couple of these. Yeah, Calyrex Shadow Rider stays in the S tier for sure. When you command the entire format to have, you know, an answer for you in terms of team building, you deserve to be in the S tier, right? Because you're dictating the meta. You're saying if you do not have a dark type, you cannot win a lot of games because Shadow Rider is that strong. For a while, it didn't get to that point, right? Remember in the beginning of the format, Calyrex wasn't topping any tournaments, right? Not making day twos or whatever. And then all of a sudden, boom, people figured out the builds for it. You know, the Clefairy stuff really made it skyrocket, of course, right? And then now you can add a strong fighting type here. So let me just put that over here. So you have Calyrex, Clefairy, and then, you know, you have stuff like Mienshao or even Urshifu for that matter. And then this is where, you know, the Calyrex that can do relatively well here, right? So you have stuff like this. Then you just add stuff like Smeargle as a good support option for Calyrex. Spore, Fake Out, Wide Guard is annoying. And then you've got Incineroar. Then you've got Rillaboom and Urshifu stuff. You can just go with like the Fire Water Grass Core stuff. This is not a team, by the way. I'm just listing like some of the good support options that Calyrex has been able to utilize throughout the format here. But, you know, all in all, no drawback, right? For Astral Barrage, okay, Draining Kiss, Terra Fairy, is also really strong, especially, again, just being able to dodge those dark type attacks. And then you have the option for a nasty plot. You can also do Calm Mind, you know, make this super bulky and then just have Protect here. And then over here, you can have like a Citrus Berry item. You can have still the Focus Sash item if you really want to. I've even seen like Life Orb sets here where you can even be more aggressive here and pick a Psychic move over here. You know, instead of Calm Mind, you can just have something like Psy Shock or Psychic. Either way, 3 moves and then Protect. Either way, lots of different Calyrex sets. We covered this in like one of our other tournament recap videos, but the fact that you can play this in so many different ways and have a lot of different supporting options with it, you know, without a doubt, just lets it stay in the S tier. Okay, and I think the 2 horses are the only ones really in the S tier. Everything else follows. You can make the argument maybe Miraidon can creep up there, but I think where we have these guys in the A tier is correct right now. And here's your B tiers. These are like pretty decent options, not bad. Okay, and then the C tier is like, okay, you'll see maybe like one of these in, you know, a top cover Zaw, but not as good as some of these other guys. I think the World Championships is just going to be these guys right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These 10, right? This is your World Championship right here. These 10 options. Okay, these guys, they're in the audience, and then they're just clapping for their friends, right? So, but yeah, I think these are the 10 that we're gonna go with right now, and I don't expect this list to change anytime soon. But who knows? You know, 1 month is still a while, but I think right now this is where we're standing here with our tier list, right? So, after that, what's left? Necrozma Duskmane, yeah, definitely D tier. Don't use this. Mewtwo, again, why use this when I can use Calyrex? And after that, you know, again, Dialga, Palkia, Reshiram, you know, pretty cool back in their heyday. Dynamax was also pretty decent for these guys, but there is no Dynamax anymore, so they stay in the D tier until maybe the next generation. All right, but that's gonna be it for our tier list. So let me know what you think right now of where we're at in Regulation G, and let me know if you think something needs to move up, maybe something needs to move down. I tried to base a lot of this off of, you know, results, especially from tournaments. Okay, I'm not going off of ladder play. Okay, that's not the reason for what we do. We're trying to, you know, analyze things from a competitive standpoint, right? Because that is the goal of our channel, right? Especially for VGC, is to help those compete. But yeah, let me know what you think of our tier list, and we'll be back with another video in the next one. Peace out, and have a good one.